Welcome back to the Podcast Digest. This is episode 128. Thank you very much for coming back. It's a special episode. I'll tell you why in just a quick second. But before we get started, I want to take a moment, as I like to do, and to thank a couple of groups of people. First of all, obviously, my Patreon supporters. I've got a new one that just joined up this week, and I wanted to take a quick minute and thank her. She is Dawn Smith, who recently signed up for Patreon, so thank you very much, Dawn. And also, I would like to thank this week's show sponsor. You guys know who it is, right? It is my friends over at Podbean. Podbean offers podcast hosting and monetization, and I really encourage you guys to check them out. If you go to www.podbean.com/TPD, you'll get more information and your first month for free. So let's get into this week's show. 128. 128 is going to be a special one, folks. It's been a long time since I've done this. Super fans of TPD, and I know that's most of you out there, right? Keeping track of everything I do every single week would recognize that we have not done a recommendation show in a very long time. In fact, I think this is the longest string of gap in a recommendation show in a long time. And the reason is because I had such a great string of guests that I just wanted to kind of keep bringing you those interviews. But it's been since October 21st on episode 113 was the last recommendation show. So this is 128. So it's been 15 weeks. We're in February now, folks, and it's been since October. Back in October, I did a recommendation show with a gentleman by the name, I'm using that term loosely, gentleman by the name of Ben Mendenhall, 1/4 of Couple Things podcast. And on there, we talked about how he was the third of 4 Couple Things hosts to join me for a recommendation show. They're great people and they love podcasts, so they're awesome to have. And today, I complete the circle. Our 4th out of 4 hosts of Couple Things podcast is my co-host for episode 128. So, Michelle von Hirschberg from Couple Things, welcome to the Podcast Digest.
Thanks, Dan. I'm thrilled to be here, and the completing the puzzle piece of the CTP recommendation hosts.
It was the inevitability of you coming on, and finally now have all the Couple Things hosts to have joined me. I've gotten great feedback and had a great time with the last 3, and I was saving the best for last, Michelle.
Oh, well, thanks.
But I want, folks, somebody who's just coming in, as I mentioned, 15 weeks without a recommendation show. So I hope a lot of you listening right now have joined in these last 15 weeks. And if you have, you may not have heard of Couple Things or of Michelle. So, Michelle, can you tell folks a little bit about yourself and what in the world is Couple Things?
Yeah, Dan. So my name is Michelle von Hirschberg, and I'm 1/4 of the Couple Things podcast. We are 2 couples, 4 best friends, who every week bring a topic to discuss barroom style. So our podcast is fun and conversational, and we talk about all kinds of different topics, like, is a taco a sandwich, for example? Is a hot dog a sandwich? Really a discussion of sandwiches.
And other foods.
And other foods. But lots of different things. We also have some serious topics. We talk about the best socks, what superhero we would be, really
the important stuff.
Anything you could possibly want to listen to. We've probably talked about it. But yeah, we try to make our podcast fun and appeal to everyone, and we really just do it to have a great time and hang out with one another.
And folks, if you haven't heard a couple of things, one, I have no idea, your podcast listening wrong. You need to listen to them. Obviously, I folks know I have talked about a couple of things. I've featured them early. I've had them on my show. I gave them even an award one year. I've been a big fan for a long time. It is a must listen for me. Within the first half day of them releasing a new show, I'm all over it. And they've released a lot of shows. In fact, you guys are coming up on episode 100, right?
It is crazy, but yes, we are. It is unbelievable how quickly the time has flown. We marked on our Google Calendar that we share, potential 100th episode, and we did this a long time ago. And we were looking at the calendar the other day, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, it's actually here! We actually should plan something."
Yes.
So we're really excited about it. We've been actually one of the things we're doing for our 100th episode is we're asking our fans and listeners to send 30-second sound bites to us of whatever they like. If they'd had a favorite topic, if they'd like to weigh in, if they'd like to tell us that they love us, whatever. And we're looking forward to getting some feedback and sharing it on our episode.
It's perfectly okay to razz your husband in these sound bites, right? Yes?
It is.
If you guys start listening to a couple things, you only need to go back an episode or two and you'll realize that Michelle's husband, Ray, is pretty much the couple things mascot, or at least that's what I say.
That's true. We all have our roles.
Yeah, you all have your roles and everybody's got their certain set of responsibility. But one thing that your responsibility is not is Twitter, right? And
that is very correct.
I could not have this conversation with you, Michelle, without bringing this up on behalf of Agent Palmer, because, folks, Michelle is famously not a Twitter user. However, there are people on the Twitter side of the podcasting world that have tried to change that. In fact, Agent Palmer, as you guys may know, previous co-host of mine on another recommendation show, and myself decided to designate a particular day of the year for all of us to tweet at and interact with Michelle. So, folks, over in the show notes, you're going to see a link to Michelle's Twitter account. All right, so all of you listening, I want you to follow Michelle, and then on April 12th, we're all going to interact with Michelle online. So my question, Michelle, is, are you ready for April 12th?
It's going to be a big day, but I think I'm ready. So what's actually funny about that is that maybe a week ago, I was talking with one of my coworkers, and she was mentioning something that she was following on Twitter, and she was also a new Twitter user. And so by complete happenstance, I decided to log into my account and see if I could find this thing that we were both talking about. And so first of all, I couldn't remember my password
Again.
It'd been that long since I'd logged in. And then once I'd logged in, I had 99 notifications, largely from you and Agent Palmer, and Molly tagging me in couple things tweets. And so I was like, okay, well, while I'm here, I'll read the notifications. And in one of the notifications, Palmer had actually said, I wonder if she still knows how to log in. And I said, well, that's actually funny because I couldn't.
Yes.
So anyway, I did take the time to follow a few more people, and then I logged off, and I haven't been on since. So I'm ready for April 12th. It's going to be a big day.
And folks, the reason that is, that was the day last year that we did this complete bombardment that Michelle describes in detail on a previous episode, a couple things. We won't spoil what that experience was like. Instead, you should go back and listen to that episode, a couple things. Really, you should be subscribing and listening regardless, because it's one of my favorite shows out there, and I think you will feel the same if you've not already subscribed. So let's get into it. Folks that are brand new to the Podcast Digest or to what we're doing here today, this is a completely different change. I basically do two types of shows nowadays. My regular interviews that I hope you guys have been enjoying, and I've been really happy with a lot of the guests I've been able to talk to, and hopefully you found some new wonderful shows. But what I occasionally do to break it up and really to kind of take the pressure off myself a little bit is do these recommendation shows. And I'm not here to interview Michelle today. I've already done that. Instead, she's my co-host, and we're going to first go over a discussion topic, what I like to call a discussion topic. We're going to bat around a current event in the podcasting world. And then we're both going to tell you about two shows each that we absolutely love. And there's going to be all the links and everything in the show notes for you to go check them out too. So, Michelle, you down for that?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So we were going back and forth about our discussion topic, and you had come up with a great one, an article in Forbes recently that we are going to, again, have a link in the show notes, folks. So because you had brought it up, would you mind introducing kind of the article and the concept about it, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were preparing for this episode, I was just searching around on the Googles to see what kind of podcast news was out there. And I happened across this. It was just released last week, I think. And it was a really interesting article, especially, given what we're doing now, because it was basically talking about like the bare minimum you need to produce a podcast. And they were trying to emphasize the fact that, obviously there's lots of really well-produced shows out there, but you don't have to have all of those things to make a podcast. And so they were describing it as like the minimum viable podcast, and the things that you needed. So, they were talking about you need a voice. It seems like a no-brainer, but that's one of the components. They were also saying, you need something to record on. It doesn't have to be a fancy soundboard or a sound recorder. It can be your computer or your recorder on your cell phone. And so anyway, it goes on to talk about the minimum things you need to start your own podcast. And this resonated with me, and I think it resonated with you, Dan, too, just because that's how we started. We literally decided one day, hey, let's try recording a podcast. And we sat down in front of our iMac and plugged a couple mics into it and just started talking. So I thought this would be a great topic to discuss as people who have started from very little and managed to produce something pretty decent, I think. And how this could be encouraging for other people who might want to start their own podcasts.
Yeah, and it's definitely an article worth reviewing. So I know a lot of you out there listening are fans. You love podcasts, and maybe like Michelle or like myself or the rest of the CTP crew, at one point you get this earworm inside your head where you're like, maybe I could do that. Maybe I've got something to say or that might be fun. But then what happens is you start to look at all that lies before you to get something up and running. And some people, I worry, may get misinformation or may look at that requirement list and either for financial reasons or for just sheer work or time say, forget it. And the perspective in this Forbes article basically says, no, you don't have to do that. There are some very easy steps with things that are likely already existing in your life, like a cell phone, that can handle that. And I've always said that most important is the content, right? You need to figure out what your show's about. I talk about you guys a lot, and I've said this time and time again, that one of the most amazing things about how you guys came out of the gate was you guys had a lot of the questions answered right off the bat. Yes, the show's been massaged a little bit over time. You guys got a little outro and a little intro, but generally speaking, for all these almost 100 episodes at this point, you guys landed on your concept right off the bat, right? It was going to be 4 topics, and each one of you bring it, and then you all bat it around the table, and more or less the structure has stayed the same. And I think that's one of the most appealing things about the show that you guys do. So for folks thinking about starting, I don't think you should at first be overly concerned about the technology or the cost, because there are low barriers to entry in those at least to get started. It's really, to me, it's about sort of the content and the premise. Like what's that? Figure that out.
Exactly. And I think, you hit on something too, and this is something that I've always loved about your show as well, is apparently the structure appeals to people. We didn't think it was important when we started, but in retrospect, the fact that we said, okay, here's the way the show was going to run, and we practiced it a few times, that was really beneficial, because I think people they know what to expect. We always have an intro, and then we have 4 topics. Each one's approximately the same length every time. So, having that structure in place and really thinking through your content, I think is almost more important than, getting all the technology and all that stuff completely in place before you start.
And on the technology front, though, what I think will happen, and this will happen, I think, to most people that get to the point of hitting publish at a point, is that then you start to get feedback. And I think it's like a lot of things. I don't know if you disagree with me or not, but I think, and I've heard this from a lot, and I know I fully agree, podcasting as a podcaster has a serious addictive quality to it. Once you kind of get this ball rolling, you want to keep doing it. And, it's not always, I know for me, and I know for you guys too, there's times when I've been tired. There's times when it hasn't worked great with my calendar. I've literally used vacation time from my job to actually meet some interviews because of their availability. And there's a certain amount of it, but you kind of keep going. And then at a point when you get hooked, you look at sort of this minimal setup that you may have from the beginning and start to say, I might want to look at this or look at that and start to change things. Has that been your experience as well? Did you guys kind of start in one way from a technology standpoint and sort of start changing pieces over time?
Oh, yeah, I definitely feel that way. I mean, when we started Couple Things, and we've told the listeners this too, we were really unsure about what we were doing. I mean, we really just said, hey, this is a great way for us to hang out and have fun. Let's just see what happens. And as you say, the more you do it and the more feedback we got from, these people who were finding us and said they liked us, we were like, wow, this is pretty cool. Maybe we should keep doing this. And of course, then, the more episodes you do, the more refined you get. And the more you think, well, if I only had this piece or that piece. And so we, when we first started, we were sharing microphones. And eventually we said, this is working that great. Like, we should probably just get 2 more. Right. And so, it snowballs that way if you start to enjoy it and you start to get, even just a little bit of feedback. Yeah. When we first started, it's not like we had a ton of listeners, but we had enough who seemed to like us to kind of propel us forward, I think.
Yeah, and what's even better about it now is that I think in some ways the technology is coming along in a way that even makes this easier. This article you talk about, and I mentioned it up front, and I will talk about them again in just a minute here, but they talk about if you decide to use, here's a quote from the article, extra bonus for this week's show sponsor, but I did not even know this, but it said if you decide to use an all-in-one service like Podbean, you can record directly to the Podbean app and hit publish right from your phone. That means you can skip step 3 below because you're already done. The idea of being able to be inside an app, record something, and immediately publish it, the technology in a lot of these hosting services, that's what Podbean is, and the article lists as well, Libsyn, Blueberry, SoundCloud, Squarespace, there's others. But the fact that some of these service providers are really removing a lot of the barriers now, and there's all kinds of different online stuff where you can take your show live with the free app called Mixler is one that is pretty popular. And some of the editing software, there's free versions and there's paid versions. And so a lot of it is getting easier. And there's all kinds of YouTube videos and great articles, and the resources are there. And really the podcast community itself, you just start asking questions, and most podcast hosts will love to help out somebody just starting out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, big shout out to Ray here, but he did so much research when we first started doing this podcast because he really wanted the sound quality to be good, and he really enjoys editing, and he just found so many resources out there. And so that in itself was amazing. And then once we started, as you say, the podcast community was so welcoming and so ready to help us. That was really inspiring, actually. I mean, that's how we met you, actually. We met you right after we started, and a number of other podcasters as well who were giving us great tips on how to make our sound quality better, how to edit better, how to, create better content. And I think if you can kind of get into that and start doing some research, you'll find loads of material to help you.
Yeah. And so folks, if you're thinking of starting a show, start with this article. And the article sort of wraps up like, look, if you want to earn praise for outstanding audio production, this is not necessarily the approach, but this is how to start, right? And like Michelle and I were just describing, then you sort of start to improve pieces of it. If you catch the bug, and I'm feeling you will if you've already got an interest, then you can start, like Michelle was talking about, to change a little bit on the audio side, upgrade the microphone. I know when I started, it just to compare, when I started in September 2014, I had a singular microphone plugged directly into my 11-inch MacBook Air, and I was sitting in my basement, and that was it. And I did that for my first, 20 episodes or so, 15 to 20 episodes. That was it. Before I realized, I kind of want to take things into a different direction. I want to talk to people on Skype. I want to be able to, improve the sound quality. And then I started making investments, and I like to think it paid off. And I think that's sort of like anything else. If you decide that, you want to start, playing pool, you'll go to Walmart and buy buy the $14.99 stick, and then you'll just start playing. But if you fall in love with it, then all of a sudden there's all these different things you can do and buy and spend, and so it's anything like that. So
it's a rabbit hole.
It is.
And what I will say is that, we're about to hit our 100th episode and we're still using our iMac. So, it's possible to create great stuff and, with not a huge amount of expense. I think that's the other thing that I think is important for people to remember. It's like, if you get started and you're really excited about it and you want to, awesome. But if you can't afford it, if you're just not sure, if you don't want to commit quite that much yet, you can create some really good quality audio using some pretty basic stuff.
Yeah, if you look out there and just do a Google search, there are plenty of them. I know previous guest of the show, Jason Snell, who runs a website called Six Colors, sixcolors.com, an Apple-centric site. He is a prolific podcaster, and he's got a whole section on his website. He's got an article in there that, how to start a podcast for under $100. And really, you can do it pretty easily. If you've already got the computer, that is obviously assumes that. Then for less than $100, you can get good stuff. I know he talks a lot about the ATR 2100 as a USB microphone that is you can find on Amazon for probably $49. And that's a solid quality microphone right there, and it plugs directly into your computer through a USB port. Right then and there, for $49 out the door, you're in a good place. You've got a good microphone, you've got good sound, and then you start building up the pieces. Right, you get the little windscreen for the mic, and then you start signing up for a particular monthly package for hosting, and some of those start as low as $5 or $10 a month, and so you can do it definitely without breaking the bank.
Yes, absolutely.
And speaking of not breaking the bank, and I mentioned them just a minute ago, but let me take just a minute here before we get to our show recommendations and talk to you folks about this week's show sponsor, Podbean. Honestly, I did not know when we started this conversation that I'd be referencing Podbean a little bit earlier with that apparently super cool feature they've got inside their mobile application, but they've got a lot of cool features. Podbean offers all kinds of stuff. Obviously, they're going to set you up with your own website when you decide to host with them. You're going to be able to customize that website in whatever way you want. They're going to be able to share your show once it's published out to all the social networks, and we know what the social networks are important. We talked a little bit about that already, about getting the word out, meeting people, and finding your audience. And with a quality embeddable player right there for the social site as well. If you've already got your own website, Podbean can integrate into that. All the support you're going to need to set it up with your RSS feed and inside iTunes. If you already have a show and you've already got a host, but maybe you're not completely thrilled with it for whatever reason, they've got full support for importing and redirecting that show to migrate it over to Podbean. They have options to set you up with a mobile application for Android and iOS. You'll be part of their online directory. And if you go to podbean.com right now and just scroll down, you'll see how they're featuring different shows in different categories all the time, so they can help get the word out about your show as well. And they'll show you screenshots on their website as well, including ones about their awesome statistics screen, comprehensive stats on your show, how well it performs, where your listeners are coming from for each episode, month, week, all that fun stuff is available right there with Podbean. And like I like to say, when you want to take your show to the next level, we're talking about, the show growing over time. When you're ready to really hit the big time, they can help you make some of your content premium. If you want to release a really super special episode and charge a fee for it, you can set that up through Podbean. If you want to start participating in advertising, having advertising on your show, they got a whole platform built out to do just that. If you want to ask support from your listeners, they've even got their own patron program. All of it's inside of Podbean. So if you are in that position where you're thinking about starting a show, I encourage you to at least put them on your list to check out. And I think you're really going to like what you see. And if you go to podbean.com/TPD for the podcast digest, that special URL not only tells them you came from me and listening to this show, but it also gets your first month for free. So it won't even cost you a thing for your first 30 days. So you can try it out, release a couple episodes, see if they work for you, or import your show over and take a look at the website, see how everything works. Your first month for free, podbean.com/TPD. And my thanks to Podbean for once again supporting the Podcast Digest. All right, it's time to recommend some great podcasts, Michelle. Let's talk about some cool stuff.
Let's.
All right, 2 shows each. Ladies first, would you like to grab the first one?
I'll kick it off.
All right.
Okay, so I'm really stoked about this first one. I started listening to this podcast a few months ago, but he's done 3 seasons of the show. It's called The Modern Man, hosted by Ollie Mann, who is one half of Answer Me This, hosted with Helen Zaltzman. And so the Modern Man is essentially your guide to 21st century culture. It's highly entertaining. He hosts it with 2 co-hosts, Ollie Peart and Alex Fox. And they talk about all kinds of different topics, some really unique and interesting. They have a section called The Zeitgeist, hosted by Ollie Peart, where he walks through the trends that he'd like us all to know about. And then Alex Fox has a section called The Foxhole, where she accepts all kinds of sexual related questions from all kinds of individuals who post on the Twitter and on their website. And then Ollie Mann has typically one guest, like a main feature of that particular episode. Up until this point, he does seasons of the show. I believe each season is 10 episodes. And one great episode in each season is called How to Be a Dad, where he and 2 other men who have similar age children talk about their experiences being dads, how old their kids are, what milestones they're going through, what things suck, what things are awesome. It's a great show. It's entertaining. He's funny. He's engaging. They talk about interesting, unique topics for the normal individual who is interested in, pop culture and trends, but wants to hear about them in a unique and sometimes sarcastic way. So one of my favorite episodes that he did this season was called I Was an Islamic Extremist. And it was a completely fascinating episode. If you want to listen to it, it's season 3, episode 6. And it just exemplifies what I love about this show. He interviews an individual who is Britain-born and was recruited by ISIS and then came back. And now he runs a nonprofit, I believe, to try and combat recruitment by ISIS. And his interview is fascinating. It really gives you some amazing insight into why people are recruited, why the current tactics that we use to try and prevent recruitment don't work. And it's just such a unique guest and an engaging episode. And they're all like that. He also interviews a man who lives in the woods and built his entire home from nature. And he actually posted photos of his visit to this man's home on his website. So The Modern Man, it's a great listen. So entertaining. Great characters. Ollie, and Alex are all just so entertaining and so engaging. And it's a great laugh for an hour every week.
That sounds awesome. And it's not one I'm currently listening to for some strange reason, which is really odd because I am a diehard illusionist and Answer Me This fan. Mm-hmm. So I kind of went through that path. I love Answer Me This. I know they're cutting back in 2017 in terms of episodes, so I should probably supplement that with The Modern Man. That sounds like it might work. But based on your description, it's one of those ones I've always known about, obviously, from listening to Answer Me This for about 1.5 years now. I've known about it, and I hear them talk about it. I think Ollie calls it out, and I have another show, da-da-da-da-da, at the end of each
Yep.
each episode. I just have not added it in, but it sounds like I need to do that, huh?
You should definitely have a listen. It'll really suck you in once you start.
Great. Just what I need, another show to suck me in. But that's what we're doing, right? That's what our recommendation show is about, is to tell folks about some awesome stuff. And it sounds like I need to just, check the box that I've been, drawing each and every week that Answer Me This comes out to go over and check out The Modern Man, because it sounds like it's going to be awesome.
It's like a trifecta, really. It's Answer Me This, The Modern Man, and The Illusionist. If you just hit all three.
Yeah, it's a 3-pack. They go together. Yes.
Before I finish this recommendation, I just pulled up their website. I have to read you. This is their About Us. If I haven't already sucked you in, I think this will. So their About Us starts: electric cars, high fidelity streaming, boutique hotels, summer footwear. It's all just so sodding exhausting, isn't it? See, he's going to guide you through it.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
That's okay. Well, I know Ollie tweeted out, and I love this. He tweeted out that they'd re-released an old episode of Answer Me This, right during the inauguration. And he says, "Here, so you don't have to put your fingers in your ears. You can listen to that." And I was like, "That's great. That's awesome."
It was great. Well, as we all know, I'm not on Twitter, but I follow Answer Me This on Facebook, and they had posted something very similar on Facebook, and I was just like, "Oh, thank you.
Sounds like a good plan, right?"
Yeah.
Podcasts are helping a lot of people nowadays, I have a feeling, to tune out so much of the outside world.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. Especially ones like The Modern Man and Answer Me That. I mean, really, the trifecta, the Ollie Mann and Helen Zaltzman trifecta, because it really is just such a lovely break from the news.
Yeah.
It's light, it's funny. You feel like you could be sitting in their living room with them.
Absolutely. It's the light and funny, and the distraction is one of the reasons I've always been such a diehard podcast listener. So, All right. Well, that's our first recommendation, The Modern Man. Links in the show notes to that show and the next 3 we're going to talk about as well, folks. You know that. All the links in the show notes to check out the websites, follow these guys on the socials. So, I'm up next. My first one is going to be, actually, I've got a theme this week. I sort of accidentally fell into it. I've realized something I've been doing lately, Michelle, and with a lot of the newer shows I've been adding to my subscription list, and I don't know why. I think I know why. I'm falling back into a lot of interview shows, and I think the reason is that I like to think that by participating in this medium for now as long as I have in that format, the interview show, I'm trying to listen to people who I know are doing it 100 times better than me and trying to glean things from them. And so actually both my recommendations for this episode are interview-based shows, and they're both very different, but they both are spectacular interviews and conversations, and I think you're worth a listen. So the first one, not sure if you've heard about this, and I didn't share in advance with you what I've got. So first one is How to Be Amazing with Michael Ian Black. Is an interview show. You guys may have heard of Michael Ian Black, longtime stand-up comedian and actor, been in a bunch of movies. Stick his name in IMDb, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. But this show actually came out of partially produced by PRX, and so that is some great backing for an amazing show that sits down and basically sort of looks at super successful people and sort of talks about, how they've accomplished what they've accomplished. And when you talk about guest list, okay, he's blowing it off, blowing the doors off. Lin-Manuel Miranda, Kevin Smith, Bob Odenkirk, Amy Schumer, I'm skipping around here, Nate Silver, Chris Hardwick, Bobcat Goldthwait, Baratunde Thurston, Felicia Day, John Leguizamo, Jim Gaffigan, and let's see here, a lot more. Dan Savage. Let's see here. Who else has he talked to? Al Roker, Harlan Coben, and on and on and on. You get the idea. Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's talked to some huge names. And these conversations, it sort of reminds me, you guys may have heard my recent episode, my conversation with Alana Levine. And because she is in the world of acting and Hollywood, I find that their conversations tend to be able to bring out something very different that isn't somebody like me, say, interviewing one of these people. And instead, there's almost like this shared experience, so they can take the conversation in different directions. And Michael does that on How to Be Amazing. And the conversations I've heard with some of these people that I've been listening to, that I've been in the public eye for a very long time, he's able to have a back and forth with them that you don't usually hear somewhere else. I mean, his conversation with Al Roker, he had an amazing conversation with Ira Glass. I mean, Ira Glass from This American Life, everybody knows Ira Glass, but you haven't heard Ira Glass have a conversation like this. And that in and of itself is worth the price of admission on How to Be Amazing. And Michael's a great interviewer. I love his style. It's so interesting because it's inquisitive, but it's almost unfiltered at the same time, where he's not afraid to sort of go there with some of these guests. And I think that's sort of what I mean by being a part of this world already, and therefore the conversations he's able to have with so many of them is amazing. And it's a great conversation, clocking in right around an hour each time. And it's very, very well done. And I came across this about 2 or 3 months ago, have been a huge fan since. And I really, really enjoy the guests, Michael, and the conversations that he's able to bring out of some of these huge names that you just haven't heard these folks talk like this before. So are you familiar with that one at all?
Wow, no, but I clearly should be. I too love podcasts like that, just because I find them so interesting, learning about people through that medium. Yeah. You don't hear about individuals that way in mainstream media. You read an article, or you maybe see an interview on TV and it's 5 minutes long, or if they're a comedian, you see them on stage or whatever. But as you say, podcasts are unique because you can have interviews like that and really get to know people. Yeah. And it actually reminds me of another show that I like called She Does, where they interview women in the creative industry. And I think all of those are so fascinating because you get to really go behind the scenes and learn a little bit more about them and their journey. And like you said, things you don't hear if you listen to This American Life and you listen to Ira Glass. I know the Ira Glass from This American Life, but I don't know any other version of Ira Glass.
Right. Exactly.
So I definitely want to check that show out.
Yeah, it's a great back catalog. Most of the interviews are pretty timeless. These people are not coming on this show to pitch their latest project, or they're not, citing anything. They're kind of, I don't want to say Mark Maron-esque, but sort of in that vein, if you will. But Mark and Michael are very different approaches to these conversations, let's say, and that comes through. But it's sort of in that vein, if you will, where they're definitely surfacing topics and showing you sides of people that you think you may have known. But I think so often with celebrities, I think we tend to take their resume, sprinkle on a little TMZ, and then our own evaluation of their last project, and that's our opinion. Right. But there's so much more, and bringing out the stories from a lot of these folks is one of the things that Michael Ian Black does with How to Be Amazing, and he does an amazing job with it. So that's my first recommendation. So that's 2 down, and we've got 2 more to go. So Michelle, back to you.
All right. So my second one is completely different from my first. I like to listen to podcasts of all kinds, but I think in a lot of ways I listen to podcasts to learn things. I love the shows like This American Life and Radio Lab and the NPR shows where they really dive into certain topics that I may have known nothing about before I listened. And that's why I love this show. It's called The Naked Scientist Podcast. They're actually one of the very first podcasts ever, which I honestly had no idea until I did research for this show today. I discovered it because I started listening to Science Versus with Wendy Zuckerman, who you have interviewed. And I remember I was on iTunes one day and it said, if you like Science Versus, you should also check out. And then, they list 5 or 6, and the Naked Scientists came up. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they're the Naked Scientists. And so I started listening, and their shows are just so fascinating. It's a podcast run out of Cambridge, actually, Kat Arney is the main presenter, but Chris Smith also presents as well. He's the original creator of the show. He launched it in 2001, which is crazy to think.
It's probably internet radio back then, right? I would assume.
It was, I think it was just posted on internet radio and like a website.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was fascinating because, again, I just found this show a couple years ago. I had no idea that it went back that far. But the goal of it's actually a full-blown website called The Naked Scientist, and they have an offshoot called Naked Genetics. And the website is this massive resource of articles on all kinds of different topics. But the website also has this podcast. Basically, their mission is to bring together scientists and doctors and broadcasters whose passion is to help the public understand and engage with science, technology, and medicine. So the thing I love about these is that they take these really interesting topics and they make them really accessible and relatable in the real world. Because so often I think people get bogged down by science. It's hard to understand. There's lingo they don't get, goes right over their head. They tune out. But this show really does a great job of taking a potentially complicated topic and then just making it really accessible. So they've won a ton of awards. If you go on their website, they've really just been recognized so often for excellence in broadcasting and science broadcasting. But, for example, some of the topics that they've delved into is what's the healthiest way to eat an entire cake is one of their episode topics.
Oh, I need that one.
I know. But they really deal with some really fascinating modern problems. Like one episode is called When the Drugs Don't Work, and they talk about antibiotic resistance in the world. But they have some fun episodes too, like caffeine, friend or foe. And I hate this phrase, but they unpack the facts as they pertain to caffeine. Is it good for you? Is it bad for you? They kind of talk you through a lot of the myths around caffeine, and then they walk you through the science. So it's just a really engaging show. Kat Arney and Chris Smith are really fabulous hosts. They clearly have a lot of knowledge about what they're talking about, but they're also broadcasters. So they're really great at audio. It's well produced, got lots of great music in it. And it's just a really enjoyable show where you listen and you feel like you learn something brand new every time you listen, which I personally love. I have a commute every day. I listen to podcasts every morning and every evening. And I love if I can get to work and I can say like, wow, I learned something new in the last 30 minutes. So The Naked Scientists, that's my second recommendation.
So, dumb question, but why is it naked?
That's a great question.
Do they ever,
and I can't answer. I still haven't figured it out.
they probably said it on episode 1 in 2001, right? And they haven't mentioned it since.
Probably. And it's funny because when I was doing research for this recommendation, I was really combing through their website and I was looking for, like an about section or a meet the team section. And I was thinking, there has got to be a reason why they're called the Naked Scientists. And I will be completely honest, I never figured it out.
It doesn't seem to. I too am looking at the same thing right now, and other than the idea is, I guess they could be interpreting the word naked as like unvarnished, like raw information, right? Like the truth in its truest form, I guess you could say, is maybe sort of the angle. But I found that I just found them on Twitter so I can put the link in the show notes for you guys. And then I went to their website through their Twitter bio because I'm really scared to put those words in Google. So
I too was afraid. I was sitting at work on my lunch break,
work,
and I was like, okay, I have to be really careful about how I type this in. And so I was sitting there, okay, Google The Naked Scientist podcast.
Yes.
It's a podcast.
Yes.
And it did come up right away, and it was all fine.
There you go.
But they really do have a fantastic website. It's they've got lots of interesting articles that go with their episodes, but they've got videos, how to start doing your own science experiments, all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
So they're really worth.
And it looks like they got a lot of shows. They got Naked Genetics, Naked Astronomy, Naked Neuroscience.
Yeah, they've really got a lot of offshoots, which I want to start listening to those now because I've only delved into the Naked Scientists, but I think the Naked Genetics episodes are really fascinating too. I mean, they've just really expanded a lot since their inception. I mean, it was 15 years ago, so they've had some time to grow.
So you would say if somebody does enjoy or has enjoyed Wendy Zuckerman with Science Versus, that this is another great one to hold them over while we're waiting on Wendy's next season, yes?
Oh, yeah, I think so. It has a very similar vibe to me, at least. I think Wendy's has a different sort of content, obviously, because she's really science versus, science versus something.
Right.
These guys are really saying, hey, climate change, it's a big topic right now. We're going to talk about this one specific thing, and we're going to give you the facts on either side, and we're going to really break it down for you. So I think it's got great content. If you like Science Versus, I think you'll love this.
Well, and they apparently feature a question of the week. And their question of the week at the time of this recording is, what would peeing on the moon look like? So I'm down to figure out what that answer is.
Well, and I actually just listened to an episode this morning. They every so often will do a Q&A episode. So they'll bring on a panel of 4 or 5 individuals with different expertise, and they'll take listener questions, and that will be their entire episode. And the listeners submit some great questions. Like this morning, one little boy recorded himself asking the question, if soap comes in different colors, why are all the bubbles only white?
That's great. Great.
But it's really cool because they bring in lots of other great minds to answer some of these really interesting questions. So it's a very well-rounded podcast.
Excellent. Well, folks, links in the show notes, so you don't have to do the Google thing. Link to their website and their socials are all there for you as well. This might have to be another one to add, as I always come away from these conversations with even more to add to my subscription list, which is wonderful. I've got one more. I've got one more for you, Michelle. I've got one more for you folks. The 4th of 4 recommendations. And I sort of alluded to the fact that it's also an interview show. So I'm sticking with my little mini theme I've got here. And this one is, I guess you could say, at first glance, well, how about this? Here's something in common with your last recommendations, Michelle. At first glance, when you hear the title of the show, you're like, wow, really? So I've got a wow, really at the title of this. This one, I think, has been getting a lot more attention here lately, as it should be, because it is a really unique concept that I don't want you to judge first, because you probably will when you hear the title, but I think as you listen to it, your mind will be completely a different conclusion. Name of the show is The Hilarious World of Depression. If you've heard of that, it's called The Hilarious World of Depression. Now, first, let me tell you a little bit about its cred, if you will. This is coming from American Public Media, APM. I've been a big fan of APM for a long time. I was really lucky to actually meet several of the people involved with American Public Media. American Public Media, if you are not familiar, if it doesn't jump to mind what I'm referring to, APM is the host or the home for the Dinner Party Download. They're the home for Brains On. They're the home for In the Dark, which just announced as of the day we're recording that they're coming back for season 2. Historically Black, which was a partnership with the Washington Post. And they've got a round of recent shows that have come on. Terrible Thanks for Asking has been getting a lot of attention as well. And this one, The Hilarious World of Depression. This is hosted by a gentleman by the name of John Moe, who has dealt with depression. But his concept is that and the website really breaks this down in a way that I think makes a lot of sense to anybody who's ever had depression in or around their life. I don't have personal experience with it, but a lot of people around me have. And listening to this show will give you a completely new perspective on what those who are dealing with depression live with on a day-to-day basis. And it's sort of about is it says right here, it says, but it's a chance to gain some insight, have a few laughs, and realize that people with depression are not alone and that together we can all feel a bit better. So this show is basically trying to peel back any type of, any type of stigma that may be attached to the word, and pull back any type of somebody who may be embarrassed or feel like, that somehow it's their fault or what have you. And a lot of the guests that he has are comedians, because he's found that it's very common for comedians to often be battling depression. Again, to bring back Mark Maron. Maron talks about that a lot on his show. And what John's doing is kind of going through and talking to a lot of people who have personally dealt with it. And there is some amazing conversations that will absolutely blow your mind. The first one, episode 1, which is how this came to my attention, just came out in December 12th of last year. Peter Sagal, the host of NPR's Wait, Don't Tell Me, had an amazing conversation with John Moe about his lifelong battle with depression. And subsequent to that, there were conversations with any number of guests, including Dick Cavett, who anybody would remember that knows anything about 60s and 70s television. This guy had worked with Judy Garland, Laurence Olivier, Marlon Brando, Groucho Marx, opened for a lot of them. Andy Richter was episode 5. Most people know that name as Conan's sidekick for years. And Andy has his own experience with it. He did had 8 guests on episode 6, including the aforementioned Michael Ian Black, as well as so many others, touring stand-up comedians and what they've been dealing with. It's a show like you've not heard of before, and you will hear this disease talked about in ways that you've never heard it talked about before. And honestly, just through subscribing and listening to this show, it has literally altered my view of what those who have to deal with this are going through. And that's an amazing thing for an interview-based podcast, to literally be shifting mentalities and attitudes about a disease. And like I said, at the title, you're like, what? But it's funny because that's how every episode opens. It's usually a cold open, and it's John asking his guests, do you think depression is hilarious? And every single guest he's had so far absolutely agrees. And they go into all kinds of different reasons, and everybody has their own story and their own journey. And it's not a sad show. There's definitely a lot of funniness in it, but it's also very enlightening. So that's my 4th recommendation, The Hilarious World of Depression. And there'll be links in the show notes. So have you ever heard of that one, Michelle?
I have another one to add to my list. So I've never heard of this either. And I honestly hadn't even heard of, what was it? APM,
American Public Media.
APM. Yes. And, but I recognize some of the names of the other podcasts you mentioned. Yes. So I'm definitely going to have to check all of these out. Yeah. I think that I'm just perusing through the description of this podcast. I think it's so important that something like this exists. Yeah. We have so far to go as far as destigmatizing mental struggles of any kind. And I think that this kind of thing is really important, because I think depression can be portrayed as so one-dimensional. And clearly what they're doing here is bringing life to these issues in a not sad way, which I think everyone expects. I think they're putting faces to the struggles and telling stories, and I think it sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to check it out.
It's it's so different. It's so different, and the destigmatizing of something like this is, like you said, I think certainly important. Because I'll be the first one to admit I'll put myself in probably a majority where I think that I did not have a full picture. I had misconceptions. I don't think I have, because I don't believe that I've had personal experience, but I've had those, in some cases, those around me have stated that they had. And when you don't personally have experience, but you hear from others their stories, something like a mental illness is easy for those without experience to wonder how something's possible or why it couldn't be resolved, with, just think about it this way, or, whatever the case may be. And this is something that will, episode by episode, quickly erode that misconception. And I can't wait to see where the rest of this goes, if there's seasons or future guests or conversations, because I think that if you're of that mindset or are willing to admit that you have at least pieces of that, but you're also willing to be open to editing that preconception, this is a show for you.
Yeah, and I think something like this can only help others be more empathetic.
Yeah.
Because I agree. I'm like you. I feel pretty fortunate in that I have not had to deal with this personally or with anyone close to me. But this obviously affects many, many people. And I think the majority of individuals find it, as much as we want to be empathetic, it is difficult to put yourself in someone's shoes when you don't truly understand what they're going through. As much as you want to be there and to help and to make suggestions. So I think that this can benefit a lot of people. And of course, if it's presented in a way that's accessible and enjoyable and entertaining, and then that's a great way to reach people.
Yeah. And like I said, it's coming from American Public Media, and they've got great credibility in terms of storytelling and audio production. This is wonderfully edited, strung together. It's got music. It's got and it's so respectfully done, and the stories are so impactful when you hear them. And I couldn't recommend it more than I do. The Hilarious World of Depression will also be linked up in the show notes as well. So
awesome.
Folks, that's 4 shows and a discussion topic if you're thinking about starting a show. So that's our episode at 128. So, Michelle, thank you very much for taking the time to join me. I very much appreciate it. And if I may say, I think we accomplished the goal, saving the best for last from CTP.
Well, thank you. This was so much fun. I'm so glad I had the chance to do this with you.
So take a minute again, please, if you would, if people want to hear more Michelle, as well as your other 3 co-hosts, Molly, Ben, and some guy named Ray. If they want to hear more of CTP, how can they find more of you and your awesome show?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find a couple things on iTunes, of course, and pretty much any other way you listen to podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, etc. Our website is couplethingspodcast.com. You can find all of our links to social media and our email address on the website, but you can also reach us at couplethingspodcast@gmail.com and primarily on Twitter at couplethingspod. Malls is our Twitter master, but we are also on Facebook and Instagram as well, and we have people who engage with us that way too.
Yeah, Instagram's a pretty busy place for you guys too.
It is. Yeah. Well, Malls and I are big Instagram fans.
Cool. Well, folks, and of course, I will also have all those links for a couple of things and Michelle and her crew as well in the show notes, as always. So, folks, that's it for this week. I hope that you enjoyed that as episode 128 recommendation show. We'll be back in another one of these at some point in the future. I'm out a couple things host, so I'm not sure who will be joining me at that point, but I imagine some of you might volunteer, so I'm not too worried about finding a co-host for the next recommendation episode. In the meantime, I'll be back with episode 129 with another great interview. So before I go, just want to ask, if you did enjoy this week, folks, please take a moment, leave a review for the show, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever reviews are accepted, or just tweet about it, share it on your Facebook page, tell folks that you are enjoying the show and you love finding out about new stuff and going behind the scenes of your favorite podcasts. I also want to take a quick minute and thank my show sponsors, Podbean. They're awesome. Go to podbean.com/TPD. If you're thinking of starting a show or looking for a new home for your podcast, you'll get your first month for free if you sign up with that special URL so you can try all of Podbean's awesome hosting features. That's it for 128, folks. Back next week with 129. Until then, for the Podcast Digest, my name is Dan Lizard.
Thank you for listening to the Podcast Digest. You can follow the show on Twitter at PodDigest. Like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Podcast Digest. Email the show feedback at thepodcastdigest@gmail.com. And you can find all the previous episodes and exclusive blog entries at the show's website, thepodcastdigest.info.